Today on Community Connections, I have Mike Salvatore, the superintendent at the Long Branch Public Schools. Welcome to the show.
Happy to be here.
Well, this is your old stomping grounds. We're in the television studio at Monmouth University, and you're a proud graduate.
But this is not my stomping grounds because this wasn't here.
No.
This was an old building that used to move in the wind when we used to sit in class over at, I think it was Withy Hall or something like that.
I don't, since I've been coming on campus for this is the Plangier Center.
No, this is all new. This is the new Monmouth. Look.
Well, you came to Monmouth when it was at its crossroads. It was not a university yet, but became one while you were here. Did you enjoy your experience here?
I loved Monmouth University, loved every piece of it. I still have so many connections to the campus, whether it be faculty or just longtime friends.
How did you grew up in Keansburg. How did you get to Monmouth University?
I was, personally, I couldn't afford Monmouth University. It was just one of those schools out of reach. State schools were something I was looking at, if anything. Then I realized with financial aid that there's a possibility through the Educational Opportunity Fund that I could actually go here with very little out-of-pocket expense, live on campus, and really appreciate everything that the campus has to offer.
When did that idea first get planted in your head that this was a possibility?
Senior year, playing football, came back into the locker room, had the Monmouth College Hawk envelope in my locker, pulled it out, and it said to all seniors or whatever, Monmouth is starting the first football team. We'd like to have you on board. And that's kind of where it started.
Addressed to Mike Salvatore or all seniors?
I think it was, I can't recall. That's a little way back, but I just remember getting it and being real excited. Like, wow, I got this letter. And it was signed Coach Kevin Callahan. And I remember saying, well, how am I going to get over to Long Branch? I didn't drive at the time. I was, I turned 17 my senior year. I graduated when I was 17 as well.
So did I. I remember that. Not driving until you were a senior.
Yeah.
It wasn't fun.
No. But I had a guidance counselor who said, you've got to go. They said, you can go to any state school, but, this is something unique about Monmouth. And she went to Monmouth and took me in her car, came out here, visited the campus, met with Colleen Johnson in UF, met with Coach Callahan, Coach Dow.
Had you ever been here before?
No, it was the first time I was ever here. So I was
different world from Keansburg.
Completely. I mean, the more squirrels on this campus than you see anywhere in your life. And then, the big selling points. This is where Annie was filmed, and just the history on the campus alone between presidents and chicken coops has converted to classrooms, and it was an amazing campus. And when I walked away, I said, "That's where I want to go." And I kind of put all my eggs in that basket at one point. I applied to other schools, got accepted, and didn't even open some of the letters.
When did you find out when in your senior year did you find out you got in here?
It was probably right about April, May.
Now, the financial package that got you through Monmouth is something that Long Branch students are still using.
Absolutely. We send dozens of children every year to college through the same process. Kids who might feel like college is out of reach because the family contribution is, they just can't contribute. We send, every year we have kids fill out waivers to apply to colleges, waivers for SATs, based upon their income to their family. And then they qualify for EOF. We have many students at Monmouth University today through the same process.
EOF is Educational Opportunity Fund.
Absolutely.
And that's a federal program, state program?
I really don't know where the actual funding is derived from. Okay. But we send, and as a lot of districts do, for kids who just don't have the means, whether it be single parent families, we send a lot of kids the same route. And we have a lot of kids doing great things that are in college, all throughout the state of New Jersey, same process.
Now, when you started here at Monmouth, you weren't thinking education
No.
You had other goals.
I did. For some reason, I had this fascination with numbers. I just felt it was one of my strengths. And I started on this course toward a math major. And I mean, just the course flow, the content alone was absurd. I mean, from probability of statistics to just advanced calculus, physics with calc, physics with analytical geometry.
I couldn't have gotten. Beginning statistics wiped me out.
Yeah.
You know, that was as far as I got in math in college.
But I enjoyed it to a point, but I really had to say, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? And as most college students are looking for extra bucks, whether it be behind a camera, you know, working at the cafeteria. Mm-hmm. I worked, at the time, Monmouth had a school on campus. And I really went there because somebody said there was a job opening. And the pay per hour was horrible, but it was something, you know.
What was it was $3.15 hour back then?
Oh, I think it was less than that. I'm almost embarrassed to say. And you were a student helper, and you went and worked. You were, you know, you weren't a teacher's assistant. You were below the teacher's assistant, you know. And you went in there, and you were there just to kind of help out in the classroom. And the school was very unique. I mean, it had children with multiply disabled children from age 5 to 21. And I started working with a class, children aged 10 to 13. And it was amazing, the connection I had with the kids. And the things I would try, because I felt like I could relate to them, were working. Mm-hmm. There were times a teacher said to me, why don't you teach the lesson? You know, and turned over their books to me. So it was a great experience. I said, I've got to, this is what I was meant to do. I was meant to work with children. So I met with my advisor and said, I've got a change of plans. Math is not going to be in my future unless it's going to be a math teacher. But I really want to work with special ed kids. And they said, you will go to school for another year. And you know how EOF paid for those 4 years? They will not pay for anything beyond that. Everything else will be out of your pocket. So this is a choice you're going to make. It's going to hit you in the pocket, and you'll pay for it for the rest of your life. And they're probably right. I still am paying my student loans now.
Right.
But I made the choice. It took me an extra year because I had to student teach for a full semester. And I had to pick up every elective class then was a core class for education. But I loved it. It was like you know, the fun you could have in an education class was far from the fun you could have in a math class.
I would think. But I make a joke that if somebody would pay, I'd go back to college.
Absolutely.
Would you do the same thing?
Live on campus in college, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Especially this campus is a lot of fun.
Now, Long Branch is, have you worked anywhere besides Long Branch as a teacher?
Immediately upon graduation, I was hired at the School for Children to be a teacher. And some of those kids are 20 years old now, 21 years old, and I was teaching them when they were 4 and 5. I worked there that summer, and Long Branch, again, put most of my eggs in that basket. I wasn't one of these kids who sent out 100 resumes to districts. I sent it to Long Branch because I did practicums there, I student taught there, and frankly, it's the most unique community I've ever experienced in terms of diversity, for economics, for religious, for race, you name it.
Right.
And you can't find it. It's so unique. And it's right along the coast here, which I love.
You surf?
Yeah, avid surfer. You know, got my 6 mil for the winter, and I enjoy being by the water. So I put my eggs in the basket, and it worked out for me.
What was the first school you were in over there?
First school ever in was the Elena Conroe School.
And you taught what?
I taught preschool, special ed.
Were you like the only male preschool teacher?
Actually, one of the few males below 5th grade. I remember sitting there with, at the time, Ken Dunn was a principal. Mm-hmm. And he came in, he said, I'm going to put you in preschool. And I said, preschool? Like, those kids are going to hug me. I don't want to go to preschool. He said, I'm going to put you there. We need a male in there. Kids, you know, they'll look up to you. And I'll tell you what, it was the greatest experience of my life, you know, teaching kids who I felt like, you know, the big brother. Mm-hmm. Were they the cool uncle.
You were, what, like 23, 24?
Yeah, I was 23, came right out of school, and I have a lot of energy, wanted to have fun. And we did, and we learned a lot. you know, and a lot of those kids are, right now, they're either seniors that are going on to college or already have graduated Long Branch High School.
So that would have been what year then? About if they were 13, it would have been about 15 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Kind of a meteoric rise from a preschool teacher to a superintendent that quick.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you what, it's, somebody joked with me and said, you're on a quick pace, you know, you've gone from teacher to principal, district administrator, and I said, well, Long Branch, it's like dog years, you know? You know, it's 1 and 7. The things you learn in 1 year in Long Branch sometimes can take you a decade to learn somewhere else.
Now, I first encountered you, you were over, I guess you were already the principal at Gregory when my younger daughter went there.
Yeah, 2001, I became principal at Gregory School, and that was an awesome experience. Just connecting with children at a totally different level.
How long did it take you to learn almost every kid's name? That's one of the things you were known for then.
Still, I take pride in that. Usually by the end of October, we had about 330, 360 kids. It was spending time in the classroom every day, and teachers who worked with me still attest to that. Every day I was in a classroom, sitting, whether it be snack or observing a teacher, and not just watching, having conversations, getting to know children.
Now, getting out of the classroom and into an office, because you can spend time in the classroom, but there's a lot of office, a lot of paperwork as a principal. What did you have to do to get there, and when did you decide that was your goal?
I always wanted to be a principal. I thought that was kind of the greatest job someone could have, but I knew I couldn't get there without being a teacher. Because the influence you have on so many children.
Right.
In fact, one of the kids here today editing was one of the kids we had back then, Christian. And, you know, I had to say that the time during the day with the kids when they're here is the most precious time. My meetings, my paperwork will wait. So that meant returning phone calls at 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, doing paperwork. At the time, emails were the only one of the few people using it, you know. It meant putting everything else aside until those children left the doors. And that's the sacrifice you make, you know. But I was willing to do it because it was worth it.
Did you have to go back to school to get a certificate or a master's?
I went back for a master's, did that online.
From where?
Capella University out of Minnesota. And I worked there, and that was a big thing because everything had to be accredited. Everything had to be approved. And at the time, there were so many bogus schools popping up out of nowhere that would give people a certificate for $1,500. But I knew that what I wanted, and in my timeline, was I wanted to get this done. And so it took me 2 years. As soon as I began teaching, I started working on my master's degree. And then I started that little course there at Gregory.
How long did you stay at Gregory before you went to central office?
I was there 3 years at Gregory as a principal.
What did you do in central office? You got about a minute before we're going to take a break.
Central office, I went over to supervise my peers at the time, which were to supervise the elementary principals, which was a very unique experience.
Did you like being out of a building and being? It's a very different role.
Different, but I chose not to be out of the building. I was in buildings every day, and that was you know.
You like that, and then assistant superintendent, and you've been superintendent for 2 years.
I was district administrator for elementary ed, then district administrator for secondary ed, then assistant superintendent.
Well, we're going to come back and talk about what it's like to be the superintendent at Long Branch.
Great.
I'm Dominique Dawes, and there's a big advantage parents can give their kids, making sure they get active at least 60 minutes each day. Studies show that physical activity not only helps kids stay healthy, it can enhance important skills like concentration and problem solving, which can improve academic performance. This means physical activity can help your kids in the most important game of all, life.
Right. So we were talking before, you moved up through the ranks rather quickly, and you've been the superintendent now for just about 2 years. You enjoy the job?
Love it.
What's the most challenging part? And I'm asking you as you're in the middle of budget season.
The challenge is trying to make sure you get every child everything they need to learn. But the real challenge is we have such diversity, what people need to learn varies so greatly, even in one classroom. There's not a class in Long Branch that doesn't have a kid who comes from a home where someone doesn't speak a different language. There's not a classroom in Long Branch where a kid doesn't come from a home with one parent. So every classroom has its own unique set of circumstances that you've got to provide for. You've got to prepare and provide for every child, from the child who has really involved parents with great resources to the child who has very little resources.
Well, one of the things I've seen, I've had both of my daughters in the public school system, is that diversity, which means that our kids are getting an education that's also very unique. You know, we're now called what, a former Abbott district?
Yeah, it's kind of like Prince, you know?
Formerly the artist known as,
yeah.
or formerly, what, the artist formerly known as Prince. What does that mean to a taxpayer and to a parent?
It's all about funding, actually. It's how we're funded. So with the state coming up with a funding formula, traditionally Abbott's were funded different. So now there's a different formula that's followed for all students, all pupils. There's a per pupil amount, and there's state aid that balances what you receive with local tax dollars.
Do you see, is this system going to stay in place for a while?
The budget language has changed with our new governor. Well, he's not a new governor anymore.
No.
The budget language has changed, and I believe there's still cases going back to Supreme Court about adequacy funding. So that's a challenge, though.
Do you know, now, you are doing the budget. We're doing this in March of 2013. If people are watching this sometime will be sometime in the future. Do you know how much state aid you have now for this budget, or is that still in play?
We received our numbers actually late last week. So we are pretty much at par where we were last year. We do have an increase in enrollment. So
how many kids are there in the Long Branch School?
We have 5,491 students as of today.
Could change for tomorrow.
Yeah, but it does. It changes every day.
And how many are in the high school?
The high school has 1,115.
And that changes a little bit every year too.
We actually, our enrollment goes between 5-6 kids every day. Changes.
In and out at the same time?
Kids moving to different countries, kids moving in from other countries, kids changing districts, kids changing schools within the district.
Is that easy to do, change schools within the district? Or?
It's not something parents like to do or that we would encourage. Sometimes a program is available at one school and not another school, so parents would opt for the change. But it rarely happens mid-year. Most of the people coming in are transferred.
Is there really much of a difference? I know that there's different academies in the schools. Is there really much different in the core education between one and another?
The core is all the same. I mean, it's the same as it is for the Long Branch, as it is for Rumson, for Homedale High School. There's state standards that need to be followed, and they don't vary from district to district. The state adopts those standards, and you're supposed to meet those standards before the kids leave each grade.
Are those standards being met? Do they judge that by a standardized test? And I know the testing was going on today.
Yeah, we were doing state testing today. How are the standards mastered, or how do we demonstrate whether some are proficient? State testing's one way. To me, state testing should just confirm what you know about children. It shouldn't be a surprise. When a child scores proficient, you should know they're going to score proficient because you've got a tremendous amount of data that tells you that prior to that test.
Based on what's already been going on in the classroom.
Absolutely, whether it be marking period grades, whether it be assessments, student assignments, presentations, there's multiple measures.
You know, one of the phrases I hear as a parent is teaching to the test, which tends to be a problem, as you read about, in urban districts, which clearly we are. The idea that we're going to teach you so you score well on the test, because that'll validate what we're doing. But A, do you think it does, and B, do we do it?
2 years ago, well, for years we had a company come in and we worked with them, and they provide these standardized test prep units. And I think last year, early last year, we stopped. We said, listen, why prepare children for a potential question that may or may not be on a test? Prepare them for the content that they're going to be exposed to. And then demonstrate mastery by different projects, different activities, and different assessments. Let's not, teaching to the test, I'll tell you, it kills creativity, it stifles teachers, and students, not one student is motivated by test prep.
Do you get some sense of how they're now doing on the standardized tests, or is it after you stop doing that, or is it a little early to tell yet?
Well, we have benchmark assessments prior, so that we're not guessing where kids are. Like, we should know that. So we have whether it be midterm exams or whether it be unit assessments, they're all eventually linked to a standardized test.
How are we doing on the standardized tests?
It varies from school to school, from child to child, and in Long Branch, because it's so unique, we have every factor. We have whereas our neighbors, they only deal with one particular child in a sense of a subgroup,
right,
where we have every subgroup that possibly exists: Black, Hispanic, Latino, born in another country, Caucasian, economically disadvantaged. Every child. So
right,
children of lower income homes sometimes don't score as well as children who come from homes with lots of resources.
Sure.
And that's a fact not just for Long Branch, throughout the country.
Now, absolutely. Now, one of the things I've seen is, and you see it in Monmouth County, where we have communities, very homogeneous, upper middle to upper class kids, and they're going to score better. But I mean, in terms of producing kids who go to college and who do well, as someone with a kid in the system, we do very well.
Well, yeah, standardized testing is a big, it's pretty controversial now in terms of, because there's no stake in the game until you get to high school. What happens if you score partially proficient in grades 3 to 8 to the child? Potentially nothing happens to them. They're not retained. They may
Retained, they're not get back, and
they're not left back. But high school, it's like all the stakes are in high school. It's if you don't meet a certain standard in high school, you don't graduate high school. And that's why I'm encouraged to even see, like yesterday, I received our graduation rate, which changes based upon kids moving in and out. And it was 92.3%, and that's a high percentage.
What does that
of kids.
measure? Kids who, when they start as a freshman, graduate within 4 years?
That's right. If they start as a freshman, even if they leave this district, do they graduate high school? It's a cohort. So if you started with 282
There's
freshmen,
your math coming back
yeah.
to play.
If you started with 282, do 282 graduate? If they didn't graduate from Long Branch, did they graduate high school? And if they didn't graduate, what happened to them? Did they move to another country? Did they go to work?
How do we compare to the other former Abbott districts with those numbers?
You know, I prefer to compare to everybody else besides Abbott.
Why?
Because it doesn't matter if you're in the Super Bowl of the worst, you know?
Okay. Okay, how do we compare to the other districts?
There's all different comparisons. I'll tell you, some of the hokey sites that exist out there have no merit at all. You know, somebody said last year, there was an article done that said between Monmouth and Ocean County, Long Branch High School has the #2 visual and performing arts program.
I saw the article.
I said, great. Then I called the person who wrote it and said, where did you come up with those figures? Because nobody ever asked us what programs we had. And he said, well, based upon reputation, the programs you have, and kids going on. But the reality is, nowadays with technology, you can create a site for ranking schools, and you could rank any school you want.
Anywhere you want.
Absolutely, with very little merit to those rankings. So our ranking varies depending on programs, whether it be AP. I'll tell you one highlight really is one of our teachers, Mr. Littman, who was an employee here at Monmouth. He works here. I mean, his scores ranked amongst the top in the nation in terms of Title I schools in the AP exam. You know, and he really...
History, civics type
well,
classes?
he teaches several classes, but I believe it was U.S. history, too. And, but I mean, so those are some things to really hang your hat on when you compare nationwide. Where are we? Certainly, our early childhood program ranks above the top in the nation in terms of high-quality programs. And then throughout the elementary experience, just varies for each kid.
What programs that you don't have would you like to start up in Long Branch?
Well, I feel like a lot of intervention programs need to take place after school. I feel like when they happen during the school day, kids are missing out on key content areas.
Okay.
And that it has to go beyond the school day. Teachers have very little time during the day when you figure transitions, lunch, outside play, you know, walking up 3 flights of stairs with, you know, 25 8-year-olds. So the learning has to take place beyond the school walls. It can't just happen within the parameters of the school building.
Now, one of the times you and I talked, was not long after what happened, the tragedy in Connecticut.
Mm.
If you're a parent in Long Branch, you can feel pretty comfortable your kids are safe. Let them know what we did just to make sure that we don't have to worry about security. So we worry about it, we're concerned about it, but we're proactive.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say that I have both of my children go to school in Long Branch. They're school-age children, and every child's safety is important.
Right.
It doesn't matter what actually programs you offer. If you don't have a safe learning environment, the rest doesn't mean anything. But after our conversation, we talked about, because they're it was a big discussion nationwide, whether you put armed guards at schools and what you do.
Which you and I both agreed we're not doing.
The question that came to me, which I completely agree with, was how many guns do you want in school?
None.
None. So don't put any there.
Right.
So I mean, it's hard to disagree with that. I agree with it.
Right.
And so what we've done is we've tightened up our security, but part of it is some things you can't tell everybody what you do in terms of security, because then you jeopardize your security.
But the parents can rest assured that we reviewed everything and made sure that we were doing it the right way.
And it's not just about reviewing it because an incident happened. These incidents are reviewed. We have 2 drills a month now. After every drill, we're reviewing our practices and procedures. And sure, if it were time, things would happen and we would change. But the drills routinely tell us sometimes we have to change what we're doing.
You've got about a minute. You've brought your kids. You have 3 children, I believe?
I do, yeah.
Twins and an older one.
I have twins and a little girl,
okay.
Actually.
What grades are they in?
The boys are in first grade now.
Which school?
Anastasia School.
And they like it there?
They love it. They love it.
Oh, that's a good thing.
Greatest experience for them.
Good. Well, thank you very much for coming over.
No, my pleasure.
Good.